I'm sure some of you witnessed what happened last Saturday. Some of you know the mortal remains of one of the outstanding leaders of the African National Congress, its sixth president, Dr. Xuma, were exhumed from his grave in Johannesburg in Brixton Cemetery, and they were repatriated and buried to his birth village in Transkei. The name of the village is called Manzana. The South African government, led by our president, Amanda at Manzana. Now, I should mention the significance of mentioning his wife. Xuma married two women in his lifetime. The first was a woman from Liberia that he had met as a student in the United States. That woman, as I'll mention now, died in 1934, and he married the second woman, who was an African-American woman from North Carolina called Mary Hall. So those were the two women he married. Now, I imagine some of you are surprised why I'm mentioning this matter. At face value, the theme of this meeting and the reburial of Xuma's remains appear to be completely unrelated. But I disagree. Let me explain. Alfred Xuma left to study in the United States in his late teens. He spent 14 years in the United States of America studying at various universities, including Tuskegee Institute, which was an academic institute established by the famous African-American Booker T. Washington. Xuma came back to South Africa in 1927 with a medical degree. He was one of the first black medical doctors in South Africa and the first in Johannesburg. In 1927, Xuma decided to settle in Johannesburg instead of the Transkei. In fact, the house that he built in Sophia Town is one of the two houses that were not demolished when the people in Sophia Town were removed. Two. He built it from scratch. You should go, it has become a museum now. You should go see it in Sophia Town. It's one of the most beautiful houses. Now, he was building it in the late 1920s. Xuma lived in Johannesburg for almost 35 years. He died on the 27th of January, 1962. Now, even when black people were removed from Sophia Town to Soweto, to Meadowlands, Xuma decided to move to Dube, where he built another house. So when he died, that house was bought by another prominent South African, Dr. Xuma, and the house still lives today. Because Xuma was inspired by Xuma and he had become a medical doctor himself. And so when Xuma died and his second wife went back to the United States, he bought that house. Matters. Now, Xuma was the first president of the ANC to make it a truly national organization. Supporters of the ANC will shift depending on where the president of the ANC came from. So when Dube became the president of the ANC in 1912, the headquarters of the ANC was in Durban. When Sifako Makgatho succeeded Dube in 1917, the headquarters of the ANC shifted to Pretoria, not too far from here, actually, just across the road. So it really depended where who the president of the ANC was and where he lived, the headquarters would move there. But when Xuma became the president of the ANC in 1940, he decided to make Johannesburg the permanent headquarters of the ANC. And in 1943, he amended the ANC constitution, and one of the big things that he changed was to make women to be full members of the ANC. Before then, they had not been full members. Now, Xuma did not consider himself just a South African leader. He considered himself the leader of the African people in South Africa, in the African continent, and in the whole world. It is no wonder that one of his major biographers titled the book about Xuma, he said, A.P. Xuma, and Xuma became the first African to address the United Nations General Assembly on the political situation in South Africa. Now here's a question, because it has relevance for our theme today, that how is it possible that this Pan-Africanist, who didn't consider himself a leader of a village, who didn't consider himself the leader of black people in South Africa, but considered himself the leader of all black people in Africa and in the African diaspora, that many years after his death, 58 years after his death, his remains are exhumed from Johannesburg and they are buried in a small village somewhere. Since when did Xuma become a village leader? That is the question that the next generation of African leaders have to address today. Now, as I have said, Xuma was broad-minded, just not only in politics, but also in his personal life. I mean, the two women he married, as I said, were non-South African, which was quite unusual at the time. The first while giving birth to their second child, Elizabeth, who was named after Xuma's mother. The first child was Alfred, their son. Elizabeth was buried at Brixton Cemetery, not at Manzana, because Xuma considered himself a Joburger. And Xuma said when he dies, he wants to be buried in the same grave where his first wife Amanda was buried, in Brixton, Johannesburg. Now, it is quite extraordinary that when Xuma's remains were exhumed last week, and because they couldn't distinguish between Xuma's bones and those of his wife, who was buried in 1934, they took Xuma's bones and those of his wife from Liberia to a village in Ngqulunga in the Transkei. Now, let's look at this tragedy and think about its implications for what we are here to discuss today. I have a question that I think we need to think about, all of us today. That how is it possible that mortal remains of this Pan-Africanist, a lifelong Joburger, be exhumed his death? I mention this point because I think this tragedy illustrates what I consider to be a retreat from Pan-Africanism in South African politics today. The fights that we see, the violence against Africans, actually is an illustration of this retreat from Pan-Africanism in our politics today. Now, because as I say, although Xuma was born in a small village in Manzana, he grew up to become a leader in the whole world. It was not an accident that he made Johannesburg his home for 35 years, because there was something about Johannesburg. And there is something about Johannesburg even today. I live in Pretoria, but there is something about Johannesburg. Johannesburg, even in the early 20th century, had become a global city. It was a place that all Africans combined and came to. Xuma realized that, and that's the reason why he sank his roots in Johannesburg and nowhere else, and he was not the first nor the last. When Peter JIAS, another Pan-Africanist, came back from studying at Oxford, he went to Durban, his birthplace. not stay in Durban, I need to go to Johannesburg. That is where everybody meets. Because what Johannesburg symbolized to Xuma, to Seme, was that it was a place where black unity, you see black unity in practice. And that is the reason why Xuma made Johannesburg his home. So, to exhume Xuma's remains 3 decades after his death and rebury them in a small village is to reduce him into nothing else but a village leader, if not worse. This is one thing that I think a new generation of thought leaders in the African continent should avoid. We need to build an Africa that is prosperous and that takes its rightful place in the family of nations. And in doing that, I think we need to transcend the narrow confines of family, of clan, of tribe, or a nation. Because as Samora Machel rightfully observed, for the nation to live, the tribe must die. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that building the new generation of African thought leaders should first and foremost mean developing a group of young men and women who think beyond a village. Their intellectual and political commitment should be to serve Africa and the world. Professor Kaswana said, what distinguishes you is that you serve humanity. And that is the definition of an African thought leader. This is the greatest lesson we have learned from the first generation of African thought leaders, who worked tirelessly to improve the conditions of the countries they lived in, while at the same time working with other Africans to improve the conditions of Africans in the continent and the world as a whole. They did not say, I come from my village and I need to improve my village alone. That is not thought leadership. The next generation of African thought leaders should appreciate the interconnectedness of the African people. There can be no prosperity in South Africa and for South Africans as long as there is poverty and want in Zimbabwe, in Cameroon, in Egypt, in Nigeria or Ethiopia. Lack of freedom and prosperity in one country is lack of freedom and prosperity for the whole African continent. We cannot prosper alone while our neighbors are not prosperous. So building the next generation of African thought leaders, therefore, is impossible if we don't take seriously also the importance of educating ourselves as Africans. I mean educating ourselves, not just getting certificates, educating ourselves and knowing who we are and where we come from. We live in a world of rapid technological changes, what has come to be known as the Fourth Industrial Revolution. These technological changes are changing the world as we have known it. There is no leader worthy of her or his salt who can hope to lead a nation, a people, without understanding these technological changes and coming to terms with them. And one of the most important tasks for the next generation of African thought leaders, therefore, is to insist on the right of every young person in Africa, from Cape to Cairo, from Ethiopia to Dakar, to be educated. Because without proper education, there can be no thought leadership, let's face it. There can be no thought leadership if we are not properly educated. I always tell people about a PhD. I hope most of you have PhDs. If you don't, please have them very, very soon. You know, a PhD, Professor Kaswana will tell you, having a PhD is unlike, rain. You know, when there is rain, we all get wet. But not with a PhD. I mean, you have to work for it and earn it. So you can't get wet with a PhD. You have to work for it. So you cannot be a thought leader if you are not properly educated. Now, while on this subject of education, I feel a moral obligation comment on what has been going on at several South African universities in the past few weeks, where libraries, lecture halls, laboratories, and other important educational infrastructure has been destroyed through arson. I don't think that there is any political cause, no matter how legitimate, that can justify the destruction of critical infrastructure such as libraries and lecture halls. And I will tell you, I was a student leader and SRC member a long time ago, for a long time. I know how to lead a student protest, I tell you. And I don't mean just a Mickey Mouse student protest, I mean a serious one, where the university comes to a standstill. Now, what I know, having done all of that, that while I was a leader for a long time at the university, there was never a single thing that was destroyed. Because even as we knew then that the struggles for access to education were legitimate, but we knew that the following week or the following month, we'll have to go back to the same library. We'll have to go back to the same lecture hall. And so what is going on, I do not think, frankly, is legitimate, and it would be immoral for Africa's thought leaders to keep silence in the face of the destruction of very limited educational infrastructure in the African continent. Now, right to education for far too long. Africa has not progressed fast enough because of this denial of education to its sons and daughters. It is time this injustice is addressed, but we cannot address this injustice and be for Africa's development while we destroy the resources that Africa has. The two goals, educating Africans and also destroying infrastructure, are incompatible. You cannot be for both of them. It's either we are for Africa's development and you condemn the destruction of its infrastructure, or we are for the destruction of its infrastructure and not for Africa's development. But as we condemn these acts of destruction, we should also reflect deeply on what leads the African youth to resort to these desperate measures. Because sometimes there is a tendency only to condemn and not to think deeply what has gone wrong. We should not condemn the symptoms and leave the causes untouched. We should look closely at the role played by university administrators and governments in perpetuating a crisis that leads students to resort to these desperate measures. Without access to quality tertiary education, there can be no next generation of Africa's thought leaders, as I've said before. I just wish to say in conclusion, Program Director, that building the next generation of Africa's thought leaders requires greater continental unity and integration. If there is one lesson that the earlier generation of Africa's thought leaders taught us, it is the fact that the unity of Africa and Africans is paramount. As Pixley Salaslebe said, one of the pioneering Pan-Africanists said, over a century ago, we are one people. And to adapt one of the fundamental principles of the liberation struggle in South Africa, Africa belongs to all who live in it, whether they are in Cairo or they are in Cape Town. Africa is for all Africans. There can be no progress in Africa if we Africans fight one another every day. The resources of this continent are abundant. I don't know whether any of you have been to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. You realize actually that Africa does not need anything from anybody. Africa can survive on its own. What prevents Africa from being self-sufficient sometimes can be Africans themselves. And that's the reason why there is no battle that we can win if we do not unite as Africans. There can be no progress in Africa if Africans fight one another every day, either as small clans or ethnic groups, because that defeats the spirit of Pan-Africanism that South Africans in Africa and in the diaspora work so hard to bring about. However, we can benefit from the continent's bounty if we unite and work together. As I conclude, Program Director, I wish to say that building the next generation of thought leaders in Africa also requires that we teach young thinkers to take pride in the continent and in being Africans. We need to be proud to be Africans. Easier said than done, but necessary. We cannot become thought leaders if we seek to imitate others. If we cannot explain our reality in our own thoughts, in our own languages, that would not be possible. A generation of Africa's thought leaders should develop its ideas while trying to address the problems that face Africa and her people. And that's the reason why we contribute to scholarship in the world. That if there is a problem in social warfare, and while trying to understand the problem in social warfare, then we develop scholarship. But we cannot start by taking a theory that was developed in France in 1848, dealing with French problems at the time, and think that problem would address the problems of Mamelodi in 2020. That is not possible. We will always be imitating others. We need to be original in our thought. The problems our continent faces are actually a great opportunity, in my view, to develop a new set of ideas to address them. When we take those problems seriously and try to address them, it's when we develop our own knowledge and our own scholarship. I want to repeat, Africa's problems can be solved if we become original in addressing those problems and not imitating others. We must invent solutions that address our unique situations. It is by dedicating ourselves to Africa and her people that we will gain respect from other peoples in the world. They will think we have something unique to contribute once we take ourselves seriously. And as Africans, we take pride in our African identity. To go back to the point that I made earlier in conclusion, to become the next generation of Africa's thought leaders means, first and foremost, that we become Pan-Africanists in our outlook. Although most of us were born in a village, in a small town, or even in a big city, we should outlive the village. We should develop ideas and solutions that address the problems of Africa and humanity as a whole. I want to repeat what someone said. In order for the nation to live, the tribe should die. And in order for Africa to develop, its thought leaders should think broadly and embrace their identity as Africans and Pan-Africanists. I thank you very much.